All right, so we're starting with this file from the blog schedule2.xlsm, and our task then is to be able to look at the schedule here and for each row be able to say, all right, starts at 12:30, goes to 1:45. I want to highlight the block over here in this visual schedule that we're building. Now, I think I've already gotten like one sub procedure made here. We haven't gotten very far, but we're starting off. Make schedule is what we've got. All right, any questions before we dive in? First thing I want to think about as I'm doing this is there a kind of a reasonable way to break this into smaller parts? So the task here is, it's pretty big. It's to do a whole bunch of rows, and it's only 54 rows here, but it could be 54,000 rows. It would really be kind of the same idea. And so kind of a way that I see to break this down, similar to the project that we did that's due today, the Fallen Angel project, is there's one task of doing this for one item, and then a separate task that says repeat that over and over again. So so we've got make schedule here, but I think I want to, instead of starting there, well, why don't we go ahead and start there? But let's get ourselves another sub procedure made that will just be something like do one class or something. So I'll just call it that, do one class. And maybe what I'll do is I will expect to, when we call this procedure, I'll expect to know what the row is. So someone's going to tell me, give me a variable called the row. I'll take that as a long integer. And let me just, at this point, do a debug.print of the row. Now remember that when I declare a variable inside the parentheses here, I don't use the keyword dim, but I am declaring a variable. It's a special variable called a parameter, and it's going to get its value when this subprocedure is called. So if up here, I were to say call this subprocedure, and by the way, you don't actually have to say call. If you just put a subprocedure on a row by itself, it'll call it. And I'm going to pass it 55. So the idea here is I'm saying when I run this subprocedure, I'm saying, oh, just go run this one. And by the way, send the value 55 to it. I guess I don't even have 50. I guess that's the very last row. And so that 55 is going to be put into this variable so that when I print the row, this is actually going to print 55. So if I run this, it should print 55. Just show me on a scale of 0 to 5 fingers how comfortable you are with what we have on the screen right now. The 5 is, I totally got it. I totally got it. It looks like everyone's feeling pretty comfortable with it. Okay. All right. So now I guess what I'd like to do is, let's do a little in-class exercise. Go ahead and write a loop. Right up here inside of make schedule, write a loop that will print off the row numbers that we need to be able to do all this data. And it would be great if we could do it, if we could do it in such a way that if we were to run this again with more data or less data, it would be able to figure out when to stop. So it's kind of one of the things that students asked for in this class. Professor Allen, we love your class and thanks for making the videos. What we would give for something besides lecture in class. Give us an in-class project or something. So let's just take a couple of minutes and see if you can do it, just kind of from memory. Write a loop here that will call do one class 54 times, and then print off those row numbers. Go ahead and pause the recording. Okay, so how many of you either got it done or thought you think I'm close and I think I'm on the way and would get there okay? Okay, so only about half of us, all right. So what do you want to, how should we do it? There are kind of 3 different loops that we learned about on Monday. What would be your preference here? Just holler it out if you got one you like. So do until is a pretty good choice. Anyone would prefer to do a different one? So for loop would work okay as long as we figure out how to figure out how many there are to begin with, because the whole idea behind a for loop is we've got to know going in. So let's go ahead and do it with the do loop. Yeah. Okay, so do and loop. Since I got a do loop, always a good idea to put a do events into it. Need some way to control it. So let me dim R as a long integer. We'll start R off at 2. And then we'll increment R inside the loop. R equals R plus 1. And no parentheses here. Do one class and just pass it R. And I think that will do the trick. I'm going to save. It was a good idea to save when I'm working with loops before I run and run. Oh, I never put until. Good thing I have a do events in here. So I can pause it. And we're going to loop until cells row number R, column number 1. What's my data look like again? Dot value. Now, normally we've done it with is equal to a 0-length string. That's one way to say blank. But another way to say blank is with a built-in function called empty. I think it's called empty. Oh, it is empty. Thank you. We'll run that again. And now it just goes right up to 55 and then stops. So the truth is we're going to be working most of, even if you don't have that all typed in, that's okay. Because we're going to spend almost the whole time just getting this to work with one row. So in fact, why don't we do, let's see. 8 a.m. Yeah, actually row number 2 is not a bad one to work with. So we'll start with that one. So just kind of a little trick that I do for debugging is, let's say that I'm on this one and I say, I want to run this. So I hit the play button, right? My insertion point is down here in my do one class. So I'll hit play and it's going to ask me, oh, what do you want to run? And in fact, do one class isn't even a choice. Why not? Why can't I just run? Why can't I just run this? That's what I'd like to do. I'd like to kind of work on it. I'm getting part way there. I'd like to see how it's doing, run it. Why won't it let me run it? It's because it's expecting to have a value passed to it. It's saying, listen, if you want to run this, you got to give me a value for the row. So you can't just run it. So here's what I'm going to do. Maybe I'll come just before this one and I'll make another sub procedure. And I'll call this the Acme sub runner. I want it to be alphabetically low, so starting with an A, so that when I'm down here and I just press F5, then it'll be the top of the list here, the one that's selected by default, so I can just press enter. So now if this is calling this and passing it row number 2 to work with. So now if I'm working down here in one class and I press F5 to run it, I can just hit enter and then that's the one it will run. So there's nothing special about this name except it's alphabetically small. So it'll be at the top of the list. Question, yeah. Why don't we have to put parentheses around this? And this is a choice that they made. And we could put the parentheses here, but we really shouldn't. It's a choice that they made back in the early 90s when they were mapping this language out. And in fact, VBA in 1995, VBA was actually just a port of the language Visual Basic 6. So this decision goes back to the early days of Visual Basic. When did that start? Late 80s, mid 80s, I'm not quite sure. But here's the idea, is that why would you want to put why would you want to put parentheses around it? They're like extra parentheses. Why would you put them there? This is what they're thinking in the 1980s. I mean, they're probably looking at the parentheses key on the keyboard over here. And they go, that's a small keyboard. There's no telling how many parentheses we got left in there. We don't want to waste them if we don't need them. And so they said there's really no reason to put them there. Now, if I'm calling a subprocedure that just goes and does something, it's got to be a statement by itself. And so truly the parentheses aren't necessary. But if this is going to be something that returns a value, in other words, I'm going to call it, it's going to go do something and send a value back, well, then all of a sudden I'm going to need to have parentheses around the arguments because now they could be nested. For example, let me just show this to you really quickly. You asked. I'm going to do a message box. MSGBOX is just going to show up a message. I could say hello or hlow, and I'll run this, and it puts up a message box. That's beautiful. Now, maybe what I'd like to do is I'd like to put up, I put the parentheses around there out of habit as well. Okay, so let's not put them there. They don't belong there. Okay, now it turns out I can specify this is going to be a critical message here. So I can take a second parameter, and now it should show a different icon when I run this. We've got the little X that saying VB critical puts that X on. Now the point is, if I try to put parentheses around and there's more than one argument, this is where it's going to fail, because it's saying, I'm not quite sure what you're talking about there. When there's only a single argument, it's okay with the parentheses because it's like the same kind. It looks at that as something like, oh, you're doing some kind of concatenation, or like if you were doing parentheses in a numeric expression, like multiply these things together and then add them to something else. It says, okay, just one expression. But as soon as it's an argument list, more than one, it's saying those parentheses don't belong. And the truth is the parentheses never belong when I'm just calling, something that goes and does something. But now let's do this. Instead of having this hard-coded here, I'm going to ask the user to enter their name. Well, there's one called an input box for that. Let's just see it first by itself. Input box, enter your name. Enter my name. Very good. Okay. And this will send back the values. What I'd like to do is I'd like to put that here. So instead of having that hard-coded, right, I want to ask the user, when I show this, before it shows the message box, it's going to ask the user for their name. Well, here's the question. Now, who does this belong to? Does this argument belong to input box, or does it belong to message box? How would you know? And the answer is, you put parentheses around it. Now that I'm saying, oh, I'm going to try to have this one run and send a value back so I can nest it, now I got to have parentheses. So I've got to put the parentheses here to say this is where the arguments end for this one. So now it wouldn't have run before, but now it goes, okay, no problem. Now I know you're ending here, and then this is just a statement by itself. It's not returning anything. So now I should be able to run that, asking for my name, gov, and it says gov with a red X. So that's why you need parentheses. If you're going to do something with a value that comes back, all of a sudden that could be nested, in which case you've got to say, here's the set that goes to this one, not to go somewhere else. And in the 1980s, when they were first making the origins of this language, they were all, well, why should you put parentheses here? It's not being nested. We're not doing anything with the return value. It couldn't be nested. So no parentheses. So the rule is that if it's just a statement going and doing something, no parentheses. If you're doing something, if it's sending a value back and you're going to do something with that value, then you have to put parentheses around it. How I wish, how much better my life would be if in the 1980s they said, you know what, just use the parentheses all the time. Because it's really kind of a difficult concept to grasp. When should I use parentheses? When should I not use the parentheses? That's the reason. By the way, they've repented since then. And the newer kind of current versions of Visual Basic, they just say put the parentheses all the time. But you're going back to the 80s. How old were you in 1985? Were any of you born? This is, oh yeah, so some of you were very young if you were born. So yeah, it's, that's the reason. Okay, that was probably more than you wanted to hear. But does that answer the question? I forgot even who asked. Yeah, okay. Okay, so here's the task. Now we're able to call this, pass it a row to work with. So let's talk about it. How are we going to convert? Well, the information we need is here in column I and J. And for today, we're not going to worry about Monday, what day it's on. We just want to be able to get a visual look at the time. How are we going to do it? That's not a simple thing. How are we going to do it? Any thoughts? Right? We've got to, we've got to get to the right range. We got to look at this time and convert it to a range. So you don't have to give me the full algorithm here, but tell me something. How am I going to get started here? What should I be doing? Anything? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, okay. So what you're saying is that Excel actually treats this, if this is a time, then that's going to be an underlying number. And so we could go ahead and do that. And the answer is, yeah, we could do that. But ultimately, what we need to do is we're going to have to kind of get how many hours there is and how many minutes there are out of that. And we can do that with, we can get there without actually turning this into time. But we'll do that kind of inside code. But I think that's a good starting place. Yeah. Oh, okay. So as soon as you say 50 nested ifs, my heart stops a beat. But this would work, and it might work especially in this domain because class times don't start at all weird times. When do they start? It looks like, if we look here, I see them starting on the hour and on the half hour. And I think I might have modified this a little bit, but I think that's when the vast majority of our classes start, either on the hour or the half hour. So that approach we could probably make that work just because it's the times are kind of restricted. Maybe not wouldn't work in other scheduling domains where things could start at 5 minutes after or 7 minutes after or something. But I think that's a possibility. Yeah. Oh, okay. So you're thinking, hey, maybe what we could do is actually parse this out and say, hey, we could look for where the colon is and take what's before the colon and after the colon. It turns out there's functions that are specifically built for pulling out the hours and the minutes off of the time, and so we'll use those. But parsing the strings would work as well. Okay, so I like it. Let's go ahead and kind of go down this road. So where are we here? So I think step one, let's go ahead and let's say we're going to need a start hour and an end hour. Let's kind of get the variables set up for that. So start hour, end hour. Oh, I'll give it a type. Now, this is legal just the way I did it here, to declare the variable and not give it a type. If I don't say as over here, what type will it be? The type we haven't talked about a whole lot. It's called variant, 22 bytes of overhead, and it'll handle just about anything. So, but I'm going to make this something a little bit less. So what would be the smallest kind of variable that would, data type that would hold like a start hour? So integer is a 2-byte number and the range is plus or minus 32,000. It would work. Is there one smaller? Single would do it, but single actually takes, I think single takes 4 bytes. Byte is the one, yeah. So byte is an integer, but it's only 1 byte. And the range is 0 to 255. And my start hour is going to be, well, I don't think we have the classes that start before 7, at least not in the business school. I I was kind of surprised to find out they have classes that start like at 6 a.m. Anyone taking a class that started here at 6 a.m.? Anyone? Like my kids took ROTC when they were here, and that's when those classes started, 6 a.m. You know, they're there running somewhere, I don't know, carrying a very heavy tire around campus when no one's watching, I guess. Okay, so that'll be good for both of these. Dim, start hour as byte, end hour as byte. All right, so let's go ahead and extract the hour. Now it turns out that there's a function called hour. And I can give it a time. Let's back up. There's a function called now. And that will just return the current time from the system clock, even if I don't put the parentheses on. There's one called hour. That will pull the hour off of the time. So right now it's the hour is 2 o'clock p.m. to 29 p.m. So that's hour number 14 of the day. Incidentally, this also works on a string if it can convert the string into a time. So if I look at, oops, double quotes, please. So if I look at 1230p, it'll be able to extract that just fine. And I'm kind of looking at when I made this data, strangely enough, I put 1345p. What's wrong with that? Yeah, it's a 24, if it's 13, it's a 24-hour clock. So I'm just curious to see what is 1345. What do you think I'm going to get here? Is it going to give me an error? Or is it going to pull out and say, oh yeah, the hour of that is 1? Oh, not 1, but 13, yeah. So it actually gets that right, even though that's kind of a weird time. Yeah, actually, if it didn't get that right, I probably would have corrected the example by now because I made that error years ago. Okay, so what that tells us is that we can look at these times as strings, which is what they are, and we can pull the hours off. So let me just go ahead and pull the start hour in. Now, how am I going to refer to that start time, which is there in column I? You know, I think I'm just going to do it with the cells format. Now, what is this? This is sheet 1. Both its code name and the sheet name is sheet 1. I'm just going to go ahead and refer to it by that. So I'm going to need to know the hour of something. So that's going to be looking at sheet 1. And we're going to look for cells. And we'll have to tell it, something inside of this to tell it which cell we're talking about, and we want the value of that. Okay, so what do I have to give it for the cells here? To tell it which cell I'm talking about, what do I, like if it's range, if I'm using the range method, I give it like A12 or something to get to the right cell. But what do I do for cells? It's a row and column, it's an ordered pair. And so, and I know I haven't even really introduced this to you. We've got a whole day where we talk about how we refer to ranges. So this is like a little preview. So, well, good news is the row is going to be passed in. So I don't have to think about what the row is. Someone's going to tell me what the row is. So row is easy. And then I is the 9th letter of the alphabet. So I can say column number 9. But interestingly, this method, cells, also allows us to pass a string to this second argument. And so I could put a capital I, it would take that okay. We'll do lowercase I since it looks a little more like an I than an L. And now I'll print the row and the start hour. Every once in a while, my voice goes to like the voice of God. Is it sounding a lot different to you out there? No? The same. Having auditory hallucinations. Start hour. Okay, so now when I run my runner here, it should give me row 2 and my start hour should be 12. Yeah, so I'm getting the 2 and the 12. End hour should be same, but column J. And print the end hour as well. All right, so I've got 12 and 13. So far, so good. We'll need a start minute and an end minute. Can you guess? If you were to guess what the function is called to extract the minute off of a time, what would you think? Minute, yeah, it's just exactly how you think. So I'm just going to declare variables for those. Start minute. Maybe I'll just make it shorter. MIN, start min.
Booping.
Good question, Caroline. Apparently not. Good question. What type should it be? What's the range for my minute going to be? 0 to 60, 0 to 59. So yeah, byte will be fine because its range is 0 to 255. So byte will be a good one for this one as well. Give you just a minute to kind of get that built into place. Any questions while we're getting there? Okay, so now I think I've got the relevant information off the row that I need. I think with the start hour and the start minute, the end hour and the end minute, I've got all the information it has to offer that's going to be useful for this part of the problem. So I think I'm going to have to somehow convert those to a start column and an end column. So I'm going to make variables for those as well. By the way, when we took a few minutes at the beginning of class today and I said, see if you can build a loop to do this, tell me how beneficial that was to your experience in class today on a scale of 0 to 5. 5 is we enjoyed doing that. 0 is, you know what, we just rather watch the video. So, okay, good. Okay, so we'll try, looks like at least 3s, 4s, and 5s out there. So maybe we'll try a little more of that. Okay, so start column. So my column is going to go up here to like BC or something. What is that? I don't know. ActiveCell.column. 55. So I could use byte for that as well. The truth is, my preference here is to do this as an integer. And the reason is it's a reference to a column. And I'm just in the habit of saying, if this is a number that has to reference a column, let me give it the space that it needs to be able to reference any column. So I don't want to argue over 1 or 2 different bytes in this. But I think it may be a good habit just to say, oh, you know what, this is going to reference a column, should be an integer. Let's just do start call, and then we'll come back and do the end column here. All right. Ugh. How am I going to get to the column? Let's come back and look at my data. All right, so are we doing okay on size there? Do I need to zoom in so you can see this? You're okay? So here, what's the start column this needs to be? Oh, I don't even know what that is. Might be helpful for me to know what AG is. Stand by for just a second. ActiveCell.column, that's 33. Okay. So when I've got a start hour of 12, I got to get that to a start column of actually probably 33, 32, 31. I think 31 is, I'm gonna have to adjust it again once I get the minutes, but I think I want to convert a start, initially convert the start hour to 31, from 12 to 31. Ugh. Any thoughts on what I should do here? You know, it's not going to be just like something simple like, well, 12 plus something equals 31. Maybe that's what it is. It's not going to be that. So if I look at these hours, an hour is how many columns wide? Here an hour is 4 columns wide. So I somehow have to get this kind of an hour kind of sized into the space that says, okay, for every hour, I've got to give it 4 new columns. For every block of 15 more minutes, I've got to give it 1 more column. So why don't we start off by taking the start hour and multiplying it by 4. So after we've got our hours configured here, start column equals start hour times 4. Now, that would give me like, let's kind of think about an hour of 8 to get to this one right here. So if this were starting, if this kind of coincidentally happened to be starting, you know, at enough columns over, we could say, well, the first 4 columns are midnight, the very first hour of the day. The next 4 columns are the 1 o'clock a.m. hour. The next 4 columns are the 2 o'clock a.m. hour. So this is going to, you know, we don't really care about those early morning hours, but I'm thinking that this is going to give me a number that's too big. Let's just go ahead and see what that gives us. So our target is going to be 33. And let me print the start column. Let me get the row, start hour, and start column. Or I think our target is 31, is that right? Okay, so we're at 48. And just the hour portion, I want it to come right back to this column, which is column 31. So what is 48 minus 31? Okay, so I think it's going to calculate something way over here, too far off to the right. So I need to bring it back by 17 columns. I think that's going to, you know, it happens that I've got a bunch of unused space here that's going to be part of kind of what I need to move over, but it's moving me over too far. So let me take that, do that multiplication first, and then subtract off 17. And I think that's going to give me the right column. Let me pass an 8 in here. I think 8 is our next row, yeah. So let me adjust my little test script. Let's pass row 3, which starts at 8 o'clock. And let's work at 8 o'clock first. So column O is 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So we should be expecting that to give us back a 15. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. So I think we've got the hour part of our start column figured out. So if the minutes are 0, we're in good shape. But this is only the hour portion. So that's gotten me to the right column for hours. Now I need to add something else onto it. What am I going to add onto it? Yep. Start minutes divided by 15, right? So if I've got, let's say my start minutes is 30, I want to kind of add in another 2 columns. And so start minutes divided by, I think you're good. That's good. So let me go ahead and do start min divided by 15. All right, so we've got, so that should still give us a start min of 0 divided by 15 is still 0. So I think for our 8 o'clock, that's still going to give us back this same column 15. But now let me put it back to go to our 12:30. And that's going to give us 33, which was what we calculated for that one. Oh, so I think we've just calculated the right start column. So at this point, I'm just going to color just the start block. We've still got to figure out how to get the duration, but I think this would give us the start block figured out. So we need something to refer to the cell in that column. Oh, we already know how to refer to the cell in the column. It's right here. So sheet, cells, whatever row, but now the column we want is the start column. And we don't want to change the value. We want to change now. Changing the background color of the cell is a little bit convoluted because the color is not really it's not the property of the cell, it's the property of the interior of the cell. So this is going to be a reference to that cell. It has a property called interior. And we've got a chapter kind of talking about the different properties of functions of ranges coming up. And then it has a color property. And we could change that color property to some number between 1 and 16 million. I know like exactly 2 colors. 0 is black. I know 3. 255 is red. And 666 is dark red, which I think is very appropriate somehow. I'm not sure why that is. But that'll be dark red. There's like millions of them. And there's lots of different ways that we can actually, come at that. You can, like use an RGB function where you give it how much red, green, and blue, and it'll give you the color. But there's another way to refer to colors. Well, let me go ahead and at least run that once. That's kind of fun. Oops. 666. And let me run that and see if it gives me a red cell there. Yeah, it gave me that red cell right there. Looks great. But I'm going to use it a different way. Instead of using color, there's another property called color index. How many colors are there? Over 16 million. How many color indexes are there? Just like a set of colors. You pick a number and it's different colors, like 55 of them, 52 or something. So you can get to different colors pretty easy this way. I'm going to set that equal to 10, which is like olive green or something. Probably not that different than what I did there to start with. A little bit different. So you can use color or color index. Just because the color index is a little bit simpler space, I'm going to use that one. And then you could play with the different numbers if you want to choose a different color here. That would be fun. Okay, so now I've got this coloring a cell. I think I could run through the whole thing and just see what it does. Am I doing that? Yeah, I've already got my loop set up here. So I'm going to run that whole thing. And let's see, all these here should be 8 o'clock classes. Is that right? That's an 8 o'clock. That's an 8 o'clock. This one looks like it's 9:30. Let me just check this one. 9:30. Yeah, I think I'm doing pretty good here. 11 o'clock is the one before. 11 o'clock. All right. So in terms of figuring out when they start, I'm feeling pretty good about that. Next, I got to figure out the duration. So we've got a start column. me give you, I think it's going to be pretty similar. Let me go ahead and let's take another 3-minute exercise. And did I close my 3-minute timer? No, probably somewhere else. Let's go ahead and make another variable called end call. And lost in space. There it is. And go ahead and see if you can calculate. If you have a question, let me know and I'll come around. All right, so my end call. Oh, let me go ahead and declare my variable. So declaring a variable end column, just like the start column. End call is going to be almost the same. It's just going to come from the end minute instead of the start minute. And it's going to be the end hour instead of the start hour. And we're not quite there, but let's just go ahead and kind of get this so that it's doing that whole range. So let's do this. Let me kind of push this out. Right here is a 1-cell range. I'd like to do a 2-cell range where I'm a multiple cell range where I give it the starting column, I give it the starting cell and the ending cell. And again, this is like a little preview. We haven't seen this yet. The range function, range, and I'm just going to give it 2 different cells. So there's the start cell, and that'll be the end cell, which is going to be that row on my end column. So this is a little bit, this is kind of a long line. Range. I made some mistake here that I'm not quite seeing. That should have pulled itself in. Oh, no, it didn't. Okay, I'm going to highlight the second argument here just so we can kind of see it. So this range says we're going to start, giving it 1 cell here to start. Here's the cell to end. It'll give me the rectangular region in between those 2 points. Yep. Oh. That wasn't the issue, but that definitely would have prevented this from working. Thank you. So now this whole thing here returns a reference to a range, a multi-cell range. What is it? It's going to be whatever is the rectangular region between this cell and this cell. So let me go ahead and run my little test script here. And let's see what that color. Actually, I'm going to clear that out and then run it again. Okay, so this is supposed to end at 1:45. So which should be my last column that I have highlighted here? Should it be column in AL or in AK? Ends at 1:45. Yeah, I think AK is the last one, and it's giving me one more. And so I think all I have to do here is just back 1 off of this. So my end column should be 1 less that I'm calculating there. That's the part that I expected to take a little while to grasp or to figure out. So again, I'm going to copy that up, I think. And then let me run them all. Let's see what I get. Make schedule. And let's just do a couple of checks here. This one ends at 9:15. Yep. This one ends at 10:45. Yep. Now you said we have one in here that ends at like 3:50 or something. Where's that? What? Which row? Oh, here it is. So I'm just curious to see what this is actually doing. So it looks like it's probably rounded that. And so it's rounded it down instead of up. I think that's probably okay for this example. If we really needed to be, because I really want to just kind of get a look at this. If that was really important, what would we do? If we really had to have the precision not as 15 minutes, but down to 5 minutes, what would we do? Yeah. Yeah, maybe instead of having 4 columns per hour, I need 20 columns per hour to be able to get that kind of precision. So I don't think I want that much precision here to have to make that kind of adjustment here. So I'm kind of good getting the overall look at this. Okay, just curious, how many of you actually got that to produce? Maybe not the subtract 1, but at least got this in the 3 minutes. Yeah, okay, good. Good for you. Okay. Well, I guess in terms of what I really wanted to get through, that was it for today. But since we've got a little more time, why don't we do something else a little more that would do a little bit different here? And why don't we do classes that are Friday in a different color? So it seems like we've got, what are our different? This will actually kind of take us into the content that we'll be learning next week. But let me just look here and see how many different kinds of schedules I have here. So let me come to data, remove duplicates. I only have 6 different kind of schedules. Monday, Wednesday, that's Tuesday, Thursday, every day, Friday only, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Ever had a class that met on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday? I never did. It's a weird one. Okay, so what might we do if we said, all right, well, we want all of our Friday only classes to be in a particular color. I want all of our Tuesday, Thursday classes to be in a different color, and so forth. To do that, it requires conditional branching. That is, we want to execute some line different based on some condition. I have a set of ones that we choose to set the color with, and we make that different accordingly. And introducing conditional branching is a topic for next week. I'm just trying to think if there's a way for me to get there without having to do conditional branching. How many of you are familiar with the match function? Does match function look at a set of values and then return the number where it matches? Yeah, I'm not sure. Anyway, why don't we call it good there for today? And we'll look at conditional branching next week. Thanks for coming. Class dismissed.